Hey guys, this is Gyoyangi Radio and I'm Yaya Kim. These days, it seems like many people listen to YouTube like a radio while working, studying, or before going to bed. So I thought it would be good to create content in radio format. So I'm trying to meet you with just my voice this time. I upload this content as a podcast, so I think you can listen to this on YouTube Music as well. And I make Korean, English, and Japanese versions of this content. I hope many people will be able to listen to this comfortably like a radio. So, for today's first story of Yaya Kim's Gyoyangi Radio, I'd like to talk about Debussy, one of my favorite classical composers. Since this is radio format, it would be good to listen to music as well. But since there are copyright issues, the topics that can be covered are somewhat limited. But since I originally planned to cover classical music content on this Gyoyangi-san channel, let's get on with today's story first. Debussy already has a swag in his name, It may be because his name is already familiar to us, but for some reason, his name seems like the name of the classical artist. It must have been his original name, but it's amazing how it matches his music so well. Anyway, Debussy. I don't know how to pronounce his name in English. Anyway, okay, well, Debussy was a French Impressionist composer from the turn of the century when the 19th century turned into the 20th century. Oh, wow. I feel like I'm on a tongue twister right now. 20th century. Oh, so difficult. Okay, let's continue. As many of you know, this period is known to have been a time when French culture and art were at their peak. At this time, the term Belle Epoque, meaning beautiful times, was coined. This was also a time when telephones, automobiles, and airplanes were invented not only in France but throughout Europe. And it was also a time when performance cultures such as circus, revues, and street performances were popular. What music comes to mind first when you think of Debussy? I think it might be the music called Moonlight. Although this music is the most famous and familiar among Debussy's music, personally, I really love this Moonlight. For me, I think this music is probably one of my top 10 favorite classical piano music. Well, when I listen to this music when I'm having a hard time, it sounds so sad that it makes me almost cry. When it's hot, when I listen to this while eating a snack with the air conditioner on, it makes me feel drowsy. When it's cold, somehow it makes me feel anxious, Strangely enough, this music seems to make me feel a variety of emotions depending on what state I am in and what mood I am in. So, do you know how the music Moonlight, which makes we feel these various emotions, was created? During Debussy's period, a street play called Commedia dell'arte was popular in France. This was originally a culture that came over from Italy, and it was a performance where same set characters appeared each time, and the play was mostly improvised. One of the characters appearing here was a clown. Other characters appear wearing masks, but only this clown appears without a mask and with his face painted white. It is said that many contemporary artists, including Debussy, enjoyed this commedia dell'arte, and it seems that this clown was particularly feel attractive to artists. I also like things like clowns, the moon, cats and crows and wolf so much. So that I even titled my first album Circus. I completely understand what part of clowns was attractive to them. In any case, many artists of that time felt a sense of sadness and loneliness in the appearance of the Pierrot, who was dressed up in white and loose clothes with painted white face, playing a ridiculous role, and the artists seem to have projected themselves into that Pierrot's ambivalence. As expected, Debussy, who fell in love with the character of the clown, somehow thinks of the moon while looking at the clown with the white face. Unlike the light of the sun, which shines so dazzlingly that we cannot even look at it, Debussy felt that the white moon, which seemed to be wrapped in a veil and emitting a soft light, was like the inner side of a mysterious character called Pierrot, who was always smiling but seemed somehow sad and lonely. The music that was born that way is Moonlight. Then, let's listen to Moonlight. So, let's talk a little about Debussy's life. Debussy, who was born in 1862 in Saint-Germain-en-Laye, near Paris, France, as the first son of a porcelain shop, is said to have had poor circumstances. Wow, I'm learning a lot of new words. His father's job was unstable, and his father even went to prison, so he seemed to move often. So it is said that Debussy did not receive a proper education. Then he learned the basic of piano from relative, and I think he felt a great attraction to the piano. And by chance, he received free piano lessons from Madame Motte, the stepmother of the poet Verlaine and an amateur pianist, and entered the Paris National Conservatoire at the young age of 10. Conservatoire? Anyway, 10 years old, maybe it is 12 years old in Korea, maybe. Anyway, Debussy first encountered the piano and began to learn the basic at the age of 7, and I don't know when he began receiving lessons from Madame Motte in earnest, but it is said that he entered the Paris National Conservatoire at the age of 10 and performed Chopin's Piano Concerto with him at the age of 11. I can say that this is a truly incredible growth rate. In most of cases, if people start playing the piano in kindergarten and move on to Chopin at it as early as middle school or high school. Anyway, after entering the Paris Conservatory, Debussy's rapidly growing musical talent attracted the attention of the teachers at the Paris Conservatory. However, it is said that Debussy was also a very well-known rebel. And Debussy gradually shifted his interest in the piano to composition. In 1884, when he was 22 years old, Debussy won the Rome Prize, which was the gateway to composers at the time, for his cantata, The Prodigal Son. I think the Rome Prize can be seen as something like an art support system created when Louis XIV implemented an art protection policy. However, Debussy was originally known as a rebel at school, both in his daily life and musically. But he received the Rome Prize with a very noble song composed in a typical way. And because of that, he went to Italy to study. When he returned to France, he returned as a rebel Debussy, and from this point on, he began to associate with Impressionist painters and poets, and became interested in Impressionism in earnest. Originally, when Debussy was a young man, Wagner, a composer representing German Romanticism, was the most popular. So like other young composers, Debussy also admired Wagner, and at that time, Wagner seemed to be the law of music and classical music itself. However, Debussy, who went on a trip to Bayreuth, Germany, to learn about Wagner, actually turned into an anti-Wagnerist. Although Debussy was talented enough to win the Rome Prize, his unconventional new style that others did not use was not welcomed. However, as he turned to anti-Wagner, he became confident in his own style, which had been rejected many times as if it were a challenge to Wagner, and gained confidence in his own talent. I can say that this is how Debussy's Impressionist music began. Debussy was very interested not only in music but also in writing and painting. So, as I mentioned earlier, at that time, he often associated with Impressionist painters and poets, and he got a lot of inspiration from paintings and poetry. One of its most well-known pieces of music is the Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun, which was inspired by the poem Afternoon of a Faun by the French poet Mallarmé. This music is also known as Debussy's formal debut as an impressionist. Debussy had an extraordinary curiosity about something new. So he was very interested in Oriental culture and Oriental art. I think he had a unique curiosity and passion for things he had never been to or experienced, such as the East. Debussy was probably the first Western musician to apply Eastern scales to his music. However, in later generations, Asian musicians were greatly influenced by Debussy. This Oriental scale is actually a pentatonic scale, and pentatonic is not only Oriental, but in the case of Debussy, he came into contact with pentatonic through Oriental culture, so I described it as an Oriental scale. Anyway, I think that's why Debussy's music is clearly different from existing classical music, and there's a lot of music that gives a particularly dreamy and mysterious feeling. And when it comes to Debussy, there's a word that always appears: Casanova. He had already been involved in an extramarital affair with a married woman since his late teens. And even after marriage, he cheated, abandoned his wife, fell in love with the married woman, and married her again. At this time, the name of a woman he newly married was Emma Bartók, but he had a daughter with this woman and composed Children's Corner for his daughter, Shushu. When I listen to this Children's Corner, I think it's really well-expressed children's world itself. And I feel that children's minds, hearts, and their perspectives are painted with music like a picture. Perhaps because Debussy was curious, free-spirited, passionate, and in some ways innocent enough to accept the world as it is, so I think he was able to express it because he had a childlike side. Then, let's listen to The Snow is Dancing from Debussy's Children's Corner. Musicologist Roger Nicholas said this. Excluding Schoenberg, the list of 20th century composers influenced by Debussy is virtually the same as the list of 20th century composers. This means that he is the musician who had the greatest influence on the 20th century. In a way, we could say that the Impressionist painters changed the paradigm of art. I think it could be said that the world of music was also changed by this Impressionist composer Debussy, a musician who made the world aware of excitement of new things with the courage to challenge traditions and stereotypes rather than settling for familiarity. An artist who inspired future artists with his work of music that combines all arts, including fine art, poetry, and theater, and create a world where the public can access a wider variety of works. So far, this has been the story of Claude Acile Debussy. Lastly, I will end Yaya Kim's Gyoyangi Radio by listening to Debussy's Dream. Good night.